So let's take a walk on the waiver wire. Which fantasy free agents will be a thing come tomorrow in your league, Adam Ray?
Well, the big name is going to be Boston Scott because the availability of Miles Sanders is out the window for Thursday night's clash with the New York Giants. And Boston Scott played 48% of the snaps against the Ravens in week 6. Corey Clement just touched the ball 8% of the time. And the Giants, you see it right there. This is a great matchup for them. So, you know what? I know we tried this earlier this season, and I can understand that people don't want to go back to it again. But with this opportunity against this defense, I think this has to be one of your top waiver claims.
All right, Adam Rank, I want to stay with the Philadelphia Eagles, but move on to the tight end position and talk about Dallas Goedert. Now, he is still available in 66% of NFL.com leagues, even though he started the season usurping Zach Ertz in Philadelphia. Now, Goedert will be returning from the injured reserve list this week after dealing with an injury, while Zach Ertz now joins the injured list, and Goedert takes back over as the tight end one in that offense. And the game's pre-injury, Dallas Goedert was averaging 15 fantasy points and saw 8+ targets.
Well, when you talk about people who have had 8+ targets, a guy who's had 8+ fantasy points in every game this season, one of just 8 wide receivers in the entire NFL to do so, is Keelan Cole, who had 9 targets versus Detroit last week, which was second on the team. You want to keep looking at these targets because then when you fast forward to the Chargers, which I project to be a high-scoring game, meaning the Gardner Minshew and the Jags offense is going to be passing late in the game, this is a great opportunity for Keelan Cole to help you out on your fantasy team. And by the way, the Chargers have allowed a top 10 fantasy wideout in 2 straight games.
Keelan Cole's been a surprising producer in Jacksonville. A guy who could surprisingly produce in San Francisco could be JaMycal Hasty. After Raheem Mostert went out last week with an injury, it was Hasty that came in and ended up leading the team in carries. Now look, check to see if Jerick McKinnon is still available. The chances are he may be gone in your league. Plus, he's going to split snaps. The only other option might be Jeff Wilson, but he was inactive with a calf injury. It's not a sure thing that he's going to play this week, in which case JaMycal Hasty is set up to get a whole lot of opportunity in that 49ers backfield. All right, let's go around the horn and name your top 3 waiver options for this week. Adam Rank, we'll start with you.
Well, I want to reiterate, the question that you asked me is who is going to be the most added player? It's going to be Boston Scott, but I think that I'm playing for the long term, and 2 guys who are available on the waiver wire right now are Travis Fulgham and T. Higgins, who have the best long-term value. So while Boston Scott helps you this week, I'm looking long-term in those 2 wide receivers.
All right, well, you're looking long-term, but I'm here for the here and now. That is why Boston Scott is my #1 priority this week on the waiver wire. And then I completely agree with you, Adam Rank. I'm going to target Travis Fulgham second and then Keelan Cole third.
Okay, so I, too, am going to join the Boston Scott revolution, but he's my number 3. I have Dallas Goedert at number 2. And if you need a quarterback, and you probably need a quarterback if you had some guys like, ones that were maybe not starting anymore, like Ryan Fitzpatrick, then you want to take a look at Justin Herbert, who I project to be in the top 10 this week and in many weeks going forward.
Well, I think you're going to need running backs. That seems to be the theme of the year. So I'm going to say Boston Scott at number 1. JaMycal Hasty is number 2 for me. And third is Travis Fulgham because the guy has just been red hot over the last few weeks. Okay, so if we are adding, that means we have to be subtracting. So who are you dropping to make space for? Who are you making waves with this week, Adam Rank?
Oh, get lost, Kirk Cousins. We don't need you anymore. And listen, early in the morning, and I live on the West Coast, so back off, I was panicking because Kirk Cousins was not playing well, and I wasn't able to enjoy it because I would love to watch it when Kirk Cousins isn't playing well, but he was on my fantasy team because Justin Herbert was on a break. And so, that's a good way to put it. Like Friends. He was on a break. No, he's on a whatever. The thing is, Kirk Cousins, we don't need you anymore. I don't like this offense. You're like the poor man's version of Jameis Winston now. But you're not even high end. You're not even going to get to 30-30. You're going to be like 20-20. You're a manager's special at the back of the restaurant or whatever.
What? I love it. The back of the restaurant, I don't know what that means, but I definitely know that that T.Y. Hilton is someone I'm putting on the back end of my situation to keep on my team. T.Y. just didn't get into the action. When you see Phillip Rivers throwing for 371 yards and T.Y. Hilton just really not getting any sort of action in that, and then I went and traced to see what was going on with his routes. He's totally covered. He's not getting open. This is not the T.Y. Hilton that we're used to. It is not a good opportunity in fantasy, and I'm a little concerned going forward because I don't think there's going to be 371 passing yards in many games this season.
I feel like T.Y. Hilton's still on rosters basically because of name brand at this point. And a lot of people maybe are stubbornly hanging on to Tyler Higbee. I think you can sort of let that one go. I mean, the good news is that he's playing nearly 82% of the snaps. The bad news is he's only running routes on about 30% of those snaps. The worst news is he's only targeted on about 20% of those routes. You don't have to be a math genius to figure out that's not really great. The Rams have a short passing game that's going to make him very touchdown dependent. Plus, you got Gerald Everett still working in there. This is just going to be too much of a roller coaster to consider having him on your roster each and every week.
Speaking of touchdowns, I wish this guy would actually score a touchdown and get me some points, but he hasn't done it yet. So I'm going to drop Marvin Jones Jr., but I'm going to drop him after this week's matchup against the Atlanta Falcons because I know, Marcus, you're going to talk about him later and say he has a really favorable matchup, so put him in the flex. So I'm going to do that, but if he does not perform, I am done with him and I am not looking back. He's only averaging not even 7 fantasy points per game, even with all the target share going his way. So kind of a disappointing one for Marvin Jones Jr., so I'm going to make waves and get rid of him after this matchup against the Falcons.